Hey guys, today we're here to talk about cardiovascular health, cardiovascular disease, the heart stuff, right?
The good stuff. I love this topic. But before we dive into this, because I think we're going to have a lot of stuff to talk about on this one, please, thank you for joining us. If you find this content helpful, click down below, subscribe, follow, like our page, and share our content, because this is how we get our information out there to support as many wise maniacs as we can so we can improve men's health. Let's dive into this topic.
Let's do it, yeah. And as a guy who had a cardiac event, had a
MI
about coming up on 3 years actually in February.
3 years ago.
And I'm the skinny fat guy.
Wow.
I'm the skinny fat guy. I can eat whatever I want, and I can burn it, and I metabolize calories pretty very well, actually. But I had a genetic predisposition. Always had high cholesterol. Never really thought much of it because I looked pretty okay from the outside. And then almost 3 years ago, had a chest pain in the middle of the night. Luckily, it wasn't the Widowmaker.
Widowmaker's scary, man.
Yeah,
Scary.
a more minor artery, and I had a heart attack, and I had a stent put in, and now I'm good to go.
Yeah.
But scary nonetheless.
No, my dad in his 50s had a heart attack. I was actually in college. I remember this. It was a scary moment for me. I was in my dorm and I got a phone call. My mom's like, basically, you got to get home. Dad's in the hospital. He was at a court case for my brother and had a heart attack on the floor of the courthouse. Luckily, he was around people to help him and get him to the hospital, end up getting a stent and everything. But this is very scary. In your 50s, that's young to get a heart attack. In your 40s, it's young to get a heart attack.
Right.
Now, one of the things that you brought up, though, that we definitely talk a little bit about is the thought around it being genetic, because the reality is actually cardiovascular disease is not genetic.
Right.
It's environmentally based. Now, about 10% of diseases are genetic,
Right.
but cardiovascular disease is more nuanced. It's like, and you can kind of share your insight on this, but we have genes that are different, of course, than everybody else, and those genes can be expressed, but they're generally expressed by lifestyle habits.
Right.
So things like, how are we eating? How are we sleeping? How much exercise are we getting? What does our stress management look like? Things like sugar or alcohol or things that are not good for the body can create those genes to turn on.
Right.
So cardiovascular disease, while the industry has pushed a lot of this being genetic, it's really not. It's much more around lifestyle behaviors.
Right.
So for me, like even you bringing that up, I got really anxious since my dad had one when I was a kid, so I always became very focused on it because I thought it was genetic.
Right.
So I was like, how do I control this? I'm doomed. My genes mean I'm doomed. I'm going to have a heart attack in my 50s like he did. And what if I die?
Right.
That's what I think about,
Right.
Luckily, like I read a lot over the years and tried to study this stuff to understand there's so many nuances to it, which we're going to dive into, I think, in this dialogue. But
Yeah.
give me your perspective. I mean, you went through it. So what was that like leading up to it? And how did you feel? And what were the things that you noticed? And then what happened after? I think that's important even for people to hear, someone who's gone through it,
Yeah, totally. And as a guy who hasn't had a drink in almost 22 years, I've been teaching yoga for 18 years, been practicing yoga for almost 22 years. You would think I would have a handle on all this stress management stuff.
No,
but I can tell you one of the biggest contributors I think was sleep.
Yeah.
I used to be so proud and prideful of I do a lot. I work a lot of hours and I don't need a lot of rest, and I've always been that way. Even when I had a corporate job before I started teaching yoga,
Right.
I'd work on 5 hours sleep, get up and do my thing and go. And there was such it was almost like a strange, twisted, internal challenge. I'm not sure if you guys can identify with this, but it's this challenge of how much can I work and how little can I sleep?
Yeah.
Just to be look at me, look what I can do. And I think the sleep and the lack of cellular reparation that we gain during sleep, I think that really had an impact on my cardiovascular health, because I've always been a workout guy. I'm very consistent with my workouts, cardiovascular workouts and the anaerobic stuff. But I think for me, I can point to two things: sugar.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Sugar and rest. And I'm a sugar guy. Being in recovery for as long as I've been in recovery, there's that predilection for the sugar content, whether it's through the booze or the extra slice of pie or whatever. I don't really have a governor on the sugar sometimes, so I take in a lot of sugar, and then I don't rest very well.
So it's funny because not to cut you off because I think there's more you can share about this, and I'm like I think people could get value from it. But sugar is an inflammatory thing, and sugar does actually impact arterial function and cardiac function,
Right.
and it does impact cholesterol. So you could be getting inflammatory plaque
Sure.
in the arterial walls that are getting deposited from too much sugar,
Right.
which can lead to an MI.
Sure.
Plaque breaks
Sure.
off and you have an occlusion, and boom,
Right.
there you
Right.
go.
And taking care of your liver is huge on that, right?
Liver is very important because the liver distributes
it
cholesterol.
distributes cholesterol, right? So
Yeah.
if that liver is working overtime,
Right,
because you're not eating well, right?
right.
Yeah, that's where a little bit of that dysfunction comes from as well.
Yeah, and like sugar, this is an interesting thing that I found out, like reading more about it over the years, is like, I didn't realize how bad sugar was. Like, sugar basically dysregulates almost all of your organ function down to the cellular level. It changes cell function. So
Right.
it suffocates the body. And you also see a lot of stuff in data that shows people with high sugar diets or processed diets with sugar end up with cancer because it's disrupting cell function.
Right.
And you get
Right.
rogue cells that turn into cancer. So it's just, sugar alone is like super
Yeah.
dangerous.
Super dangerous,
But,
yeah.
but our generation grew up around sugar, like
Yeah. Honey Nut Cheerios.
cereals,
Right,
lunch,
exactly.
like everything was sugar,
Exactly.
not knowing like, whoa, even up to brain health, right? ADHD,
Sure.
anxiety, depression, all those things. So
Right. Like I think about like growing up as a kid, right, and getting waking up and having Honey Nut Cheerios for breakfast.
Totally.
With the
Lucky
with the sugar
Charms.
process, whatever, Lucky
Yeah.
Charms, and then having like a bologna sandwich for lunch, like all like processed
American
salt
Wonder
infused.
Bread,
Yeah,
Wonder
like
Bread.
the
It's
Wonder
all
Bread,
sugar.
Like, it's all sugar, and
Yeah.
like your body can't even process.
And then
that.
being Italian, pasta,
pasta, at
more
night,
sugar.
add more sugar, and like
Bread,
you
more
know,
sugar,
and
yeah.
like when you're 7 years old at Christmas, having like a glass of wine when you're 7.
Yeah,
That's
Some
what
Italians
everybody's
do.
doing. Yeah, don't worry about the kid. All right,
I get a kick in that a little bit.
Yeah, I blame everything on my uncle.
Totally. So what was it like? Like, I know from you directly, but like, what did you feel? What was like? What was like leading up to that event? Like, you had mentioned you had some symptomology, like things that were popping up for you, like
A little bit of fatigue. Yeah, a little bit of fatigue. A little bit of like muscle mass loss. My performance in the gym was not nearly as great, and I started getting more fatigued, generally more fatigued. That I just kind of like inspired greater energy through like drinking coffee
yeah,
and putting myself into more stressful situations that I would have to power through.
yeah,
Because I feed off stress too.
and there's like some part of that's healthy though, right? It's
some
like,
part of stress is healthy, but then
yeah.
but then if the only thing that inspires you is like stress, that can be really tough too.
right.
So so lack of sleep, sugar, stress, all that stuff. Post event, post cardiac event, a reevaluation of life a little bit. But it's so funny how the brain works too, because I still feel like even at 48, I still feel like I'm 20. And I still think I can live
Same.
like I'm 20.
Same.
And that's not reality. That's delusional. Like, I'm not 20.
Yeah.
So maybe I need to take care of
Right.
myself like a 48-year-old with a 6-year-old child who had a cardiac event 3 years ago.
Yeah, and you know what's funny too is like I look back at pictures and things that we did in the Wiseman. This is like 3-4 years ago, whatever it was. And I look at the pictures then, I look at you now. It was clear when you look at your pictures, you could tell that there was something going on.
Wow.
You were a little bit more puffy, you were red, you looked a little bit more bloaty, whereas now you look lean, your skin looks good. Like these are like things that like you don't
Thanks,
even
man.
need. Yeah, you look great. You look great. These are things like even I picked up on going through my health changes. I didn't notice until after the fact. Like my skin changed, my energy changed, like
Right.
the way I felt changed. Like, but I didn't know till I look back at some of the pictures. I'm like, man, I was bloated. My skin was puffy.
Right.
Oh yeah, I remember I had all these aches and pains and
Right.
things. I'm like, why do I feel this way in my 30s? But like looking at you now, you clearly can tell like you're definitely living a healthier lifestyle.
Trying to,
I think you said like you're eating more. You said you eat a lot more vegetables, and you're eating. What was the other thing? I don't know.
More protein rich.
More protein rich foods and things that are like supportive for health.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's funny, like when my dad had a heart attack, he lost muscle mass pretty quick from the shock in the body.
Sure. Sure.
And then he, whatever other things he was dealing with. Did you feel that? Did that happen to you, or did you feel like?
Yeah, it's interesting because if the body is sedentary
For a while.
for within 48 hours, you start to lose muscle mass.
So you become, what is it, catabolic, right? Is that catabolic?
It kind of atrophies just a little bit.
Atrophy, or you get sarcopenic
Right,
type of reactions.
Exactly. So being in the hospital for a day and a half, 2 days, yes, for sure, like a little bit of that muscle mass, and also one of the things that I really probably like tantamount to the event itself was managing my stress after the event. Because if I were to eat something and have like a gas pain, my brain would go, oh my God, you're having a cardiac event.
The same feeling.
Right? So then my brain would go like, oh shit, like it's another heart attack. I can recall making phone calls to my doctor's PA and being on a Saturday night at 10 o'clock, sending her a text message being like, I'm so sorry, it's like 10 o'clock on a Saturday, but I'm sitting on my couch, I'm having chest pains. I need to know if I should go back to the emergency room.
Right.
And she talked me off the ledge and said, like, listen, mechanically, your heart is fine. So understand that. She's like, this is anxiety and this is stress.
Right.
Manage that.
Right.
And then you can start to manage everything else. So even the idea of, oh no, this is happening again. Oh no, my daughter's gonna grow up without a father. The whole storyline. The whole storyline that goes along with it. Yeah.
And those can just snowball into even worse.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Crawling up in a ball in a corner, like, scratching my dog's ear, just trying to talk myself off the ledge, like
that's the stress part of it. Again, it's funny. It's like you go back like 10, 15 years, and not a lot of people in the clinical world were talking about stress and stress implicated diseases. I mean, they knew it, but they didn't really talk about it being the core root of things. But now you look at it like people think high cholesterol causes heart attacks. People think genetic errors. The reality is that there's something upstream.
Right.
What's the upstream thing? And a lot of times it's stress related. So stress changes your metabolic function. It can basically spike your blood sugar just from stress alone, right?
Right.
And then it could also change your lipid profile. Like we talked about, the liver starts to spit out cholesterol. Why is it doing that? Well, in my reading, and why I figured this out too with someone who had high cholesterol, I realized that the liver's trying to mobilize fats. Right. Because it's mobilizing energy. Right. To basically protect itself and maybe be prepared to go run or do something.
Sure.
So stress ends up being more the indicative of heart attacks.
Right.
But it's the event, that last final event of the plaque breaking off or having occlusion in the artery over time from inflammatory reactions that eventually leads to it. Right. So plaque, cholesterol plaques, things. But managing stress, which is kind of like the underlying thing that we talk about, and even in our retreats, like our experiences, we're exercise. We talk about all things, exercise, nutrition, but at the end of the day, it's really how do you reduce stress to be in homeostasis,
right,
so that you could prevent as much of chronic illness as possible, including heart attacks.
Sure. And when you look at the top 5, you're looking at cardiac disease number 1, cancer number 2.
Yeah.
So when those cancer cells are just waiting to be, those dormant cancer cells are waiting to be awakened by poor lifestyle, sugar, lack of sleep, stress, whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
Right.
And even diabetes is on that list, which is also connected to cardiac function.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about this. Just like my years in health and wellness and wearables and diagnostics, you mentioned a couple key things, which I think are great takeaways for people, which is optimizing your sleep. Like you said before, unless you're that 1% in the population that can have it, that has a gene that basically says you could sleep 4 to 6 hours a night, the rest of us have to sleep 8 hours a night, roughly around 8 hours a night. When you rest and you sleep and you get proper restorative sleep, you're able to reduce stress. And you maintain metabolic function. Right. And there's a lot of neurochemicals that all happen during the sleep period. That's why we sleep. We sleep to rest and recover and restore our body for the next day to then go back out and live life. Right. The second one is diet and lifestyle. So eating nutritious foods, a diversity of foods. I don't care about the diet fads that I see out there. I think they're ridiculous. You need to be eating a diverse diet of phytonutrients, greens, vegetables, fruits, and healthy proteins and fats, because that's what's abundant in the world. In the world, that's what we've basically grown up with in the environment. Right. The third one's exercise. Like you talked about it, like recovery. What's part of the recovery for a heart attack?
Right.
Exercise, because the heart is a muscle.
Right.
If you don't exercise, it becomes weak.
Right.
So you need to strengthen the heart just like you need to strengthen everything else. And you get better blood flow, right? And what does blood flow do? It provides nutrients to all of the organ systems, including the brain and everything else. So exercise is huge. So we got sleep, we've got food and nutrition, we've got exercise, we've got stress management. Hydration I would add in there, because hydration is crucial for organ function as well, and flushing the system out.
And hydrating cells through breathing well.
Because everything functions on water. We're full of water.
And real quick before you continue, like,
Yeah.
I just saw this thing recently around you could have two people, right? And one person is a smoker and exercises daily, and one person's a non-smoker but does not exercise. You'd rather be the smoker who exercises than the non-smoker who doesn't exercise.
I believe it. I believe it.
Which is like mind-boggling when you think about it.
It
Right?
is, but like when I was just in Sicily this past year, right? If you go to Sicily, like everybody's smoking.
And they all walk around.
But they have low disease onset in Italy and
Absolutely.
Sicily for the most part. And why? Because they're walking all day. They don't take cars. They walk to the village. They walk
Right.
back home. They go up
They go
lots of
hills.
elevation,
Yep.
down elevation.
Cardiovascular stress, which is great.
Exactly. Like zone 2 cardio. This is all the stuff in the Western world that everyone's talking about as influencers that they do naturally.
Yeah. Right.
You know, they eat healthy, diverse diets, fish and vegetables and fruits.
And real food.
But they're smoking.
Right.
But they don't have the same issues we have. So I think it's right on the money. It's like you'd rather be the person having that than the person that's sedentary and smoking.
Sure.
The sedentary, like being sedentary will kill you. It will kill you.
Sitting is the new smoking.
It is the new smoking. I think they said it was like equivalent. I was looking this up. It's like equivalent to smoking like 20 cigarettes a day or something like that.
Was sitting a lot?
Yeah.
Wow.
Or it's like at least a pack a day.
Wow, it's amazing.
A pack to 20 cigarettes a day.
Just from the
from sitting.
lack
Because
of
you're
lung
not
capacity.
because you're not, like you said, you're not breathing
Right.
deep.
Right.
You're shallow breathing. You're hunched over. You're not moving your lymph.
Which is critical.
Right, and then you're not moving the whole body to create that cellular function, that movement.
You need that lymph to move. That's your immune system right there. Right?
And the
It's
brain's
like,
getting.
the brain's getting foggy.
So I think cardiac health is like a big one. There's other pieces we could definitely go into that, like how other things like cardiac health can impair other parts of the body. And really realistically, like when you look at like the average dude today, 50% of them don't even exercise.
Yeah, it's true.
50% of them don't eat well. 50% of them don't seek clinical help.
Right.
Like, I mean, just going to a doctor and getting a physical. Like,
It's all avoidance behavior.
it's all avoidance behavior. And then what happens is cardiovascular disease or other diseases, they think they just pop up.
Right.
But they don't. There are years of doing the same thing like that over and over again.
And it takes those acute events for some people to see the light.
Yeah.
Right. So hopefully that never happens to you.
Hopefully not. I think unfortunately it happened to you, but like,
Fortunately.
but fortunately for everybody else that gets to see this content, you're hearing it firsthand from someone who's been doing this and someone who does yoga, quit drinking, practices a healthy lifestyle, but maybe couldn't optimize all the time, and that's the reality of our modern lives. It's hard to juggle all this shit, you know.
Yeah.
But if you could just do one extra thing a day or one extra thing a week, it'll change maybe the outcome.
Keep it simple, right?
Keep it simple. Keep it simple. Stupid. Kiss the kiss.
Kiss. Keep it simple, stupid.
Kiss method.
Keep it simple.
Thank you again for joining us. As always, click the link below, subscribe, share our content because it's so important for people to learn from the things that we've done.
Right.
And I said before, our struggles are your shortcuts. Use them. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Right on.
We're out.